TV shows tell us a lot about ourselves and how we connect with others. Everyone who knows me is already well aware of my serious addiction to television, quality television, and how much I love talking about my favorite shows. Here are the 11 shows that wouldn't let me go this year. Hi, I'm Sean, a professional storyteller. If there's one thing I love as much as writing a great story, it's getting lost in a really great TV show. This list, it's not a best of list, it's definitely not a critics list. These are the shows from last year that were as much fun to watch as they were to talk about. I went over a few of these on my writing podcast with my writing partner, Dave, Write, Publish, Repeat, but I decided to make a full list for you here. From Succession's gut punch, Guy Ritchie's unexpected masterpiece, and a Netflix show so dark that Cindy and I had to take a walk afterward, this rundown has something for everyone. Let's start with Hacks Season 3. Somehow, this show keeps getting better and better, and Season 3 was its best yet. Deborah Vance, played by Jean Smart in what is my favorite role outside of her in The Watchmen, she was in peak form, but what made the season truly exceptional, beyond the wit, was how much deeper it went emotionally this season. The jokes were as cutting and brilliant as ever, but the season was about growth, connection, and navigating the complexities of messy relationships. I also loved watching Deborah and Ava's dynamic evolve because it felt more authentic than ever. The way the season balanced biting humor with poignant character moments was the kind of storytelling that inspires me as a creator and moves me as a viewer. Jean Smart was phenomenal, again, but Hannah Einbender deserves every bit of praise for how much heart and nuance she brought to Ava this year. It's rare for a comedy to feel this layered, and the third season of Hacks had me and Cindy already jonesing for a fourth season. Shogun on FX Hulu. I only knew about the original Shogun from that scene in Kill Bill 2 where Beatrix cuddles with BB before she goes out to the front room and murders BB's father, but this reboot blew me away. The show immerses you in feudal Japan with stunning visuals, betrayal-laden drama, and storytelling so visceral, it feels like time travel. The attention to detail in the series is stunning. Watching Shogun felt like witnessing a story that felt handcrafted from every angle. Cindy and I took our time with this show. We only watched one episode each night. Between the visuals and the subtitles, it was just like rich food. We just needed a little bit, and we were sad when we were all out of them. Next up is Ripley on Netflix. I love the original movie with Matt Damon and Jude Law and Gwyneth Paltrow and Philip Seymour Hoffman. So I went into this remake feeling curious, especially around the creator's decision to shoot it in black and white, which was absolutely the right decision. This limited series ended up being one of the biggest surprises for me of the year. Andrew Scott delivers a haunting portrayal of Tom Ripley in this handsomely literary adaptation of Patricia Highsmith's novels. And the director's decision to film in monochrome, it was weird at first and a stroke of genius at the end. It really does heighten every shadow and glance and little morsel of tension. The result is this gorgeous atmospheric series that feels like reading a classic series come to life. And I know a lot of modern audiences feel a disconnect with black and white, but for this, it really absolutely worked for me. Watching Ripley's slow descent into manipulation and deception is captivating, and it was deeply unsettling. Cindy and I watched the original right after we finished this, and it absolutely holds up. We still loved it. But there's something special about this adaptation. Next up is another one from Netflix, which, good for you, Netflix. You usually don't have this many shows on the list. But Griselda. It was a lot of fun to see Sofia Vergara chewing on all of these scenes. You could tell she was having a lot of fun getting to expand beyond the really broad comedic stuff that she's usually given. And her performance here as Griselda Blanco is a tour de force. She plays the infamous drug queenpin like she's having a good time and like you don't want to be anywhere around her. The show was unflinching, intense, and utterly gripping. While it's not exactly fun, it was a series that was impossible to look away from. Vergara's layered performance, balancing ruthlessness with surprising vulnerability, made this one of the most compelling TV shows of the year and the first limited series we saw in 2024. I didn't want recency bias to exclude the show from this list, which that tends to happen at the end of the year. I'm just remembering everything that I just saw, and so those tend to be higher up, and I thought this one was worthy of some praise. Next up is another one from Netflix. This one is The Gentleman, and Guy Ritchie clearly still has the magic. It's like this show was sprinkled with the same cinematic stardust that made Snatch a masterpiece more than 20 years ago, but now with more room to breathe. The Gentleman was exquisite television, easily Ritchie's best work since Snatch, or maybe since Divorcing Madonna. I watched this twice, once with the studio during our weekly watch, and with the actual film sandwiched between viewings. It was really fun to see the differences between the TV show and the movie and how much Guy Ritchie was clearly playing with the two different formats. I can't wait for season 2. Next up is Dark Matter on Apple TV. I read Blake Crouch's novel when it first came out, so I was definitely excited about this adaptation and thrilled that Apple had taken custody, seeing as how much they're putting into all of their shows. Not only would I love the opening sequence almost for sure, I knew that the story itself would rival what HBO was putting out, because ever since HBO decided to try to be the new Netflix, Apple has come in to try to be the new HBO. Well done with Dark Matter. The show is a mind-bending exploration of parallel universes and the choices that define us. The show delivered on all the book's best ideas while carving its own unique path. I can't wait for season 2. I was surprised that there is a season 2. The book doesn't go to a place where there's season 2, but when the final episode was over and I realized there was a season 2, I was excited about it, and that's not always the case. More on that at the end of this list. Next up is Succession on HBO. The Roy family saga came to a gut-wrenching end this year. And while the finale initially left me a little cold or maybe conflicted, I've come to appreciate it the longer I've sat with it. So I imagine I'll come full circle and really learn to appreciate it like I finally did with The Sopranos when we rewatched that earlier this year. What really makes Succession so exceptional is how the Roy children, all driven by a tangled up blend of ambition and insecurities and thirst for their father's love, or at least approval, they never feel like tropes. Each sibling is rendered with such meticulous nuance that their flaws, manipulations, and glimmers of vulnerability make the family's internal warfare both deeply human and deeply tragic. I mean, we're talking Shakespeare-level stuff here. Cindy and I will eventually rewatch the entire series, I'm sure, and I already know that the ending will hit differently, same as it did with Sopranos once you see everything that they had built up for. But I do admit that Succession didn't hit me as hard as I thought it would at the end, considering how the finales of the first 3 seasons, each one I thought was just amazing. But even when it wasn't perfect, Succession was still better than just about anything else on TV. Next up is Fargo Season 5 on FX Hulu. This season continues the anthology's tradition of darkly comic crime stories set against the stark backdrop of Middle America. This time around, the action revolves around Dot Lyon, and this is my favorite Juno Temple performance by far, playing an unassuming housewife with some surprising secrets to hide. She goes on the run, and it's fierce from start to finish. Definitely the most intense for me of all of the Fargo seasons. Her ordinary life just explodes into chaos, and she's pursued by law enforcement and hitman, and her whole past just catches up to her and sets off a chain reaction, as things always do in Fargo. But just the immediacy of this season, it's really intense. This is all happening with her while I guess it's not too much of a spoiler to say John Hamm's character, Sheriff Roy Tillman, is actually her ex-husband. We find that out pretty fast, and he's fixated on bringing Dot to justice. It's complicated and it's morally murky, and I enjoyed John Hamm here more than at any time since he played Don Draper, even though he's a total fucker. Or perhaps because he's a total fucker. As usual, the show balances creeping tension with its signature offbeat humor, painting a portrait of small-town America simmering with hidden darkness. Cindy and I saw the first season of Fargo together, but then I watched the other 4 seasons on my own, so it was a lot of fun to revisit the 4 seasons together before going into this 5th one, and it made it all that much sweeter because as much as I enjoyed this, season 4 really was as lackluster as I remembered, and so that made season 5 even more enjoyable. Next up is Baby Reindeer. Yes, also on Netflix, but it was great. This dark and chilling adaptation of Richard Gadd's one-man play is not for the faint of heart. It's a disturbing exploration of obsession and the ripple effects of a single moment spiraling out of control. We watched this entire limited series in one sitting, though we really probably should have paced ourselves. Baby Reindeer is intense, unrelenting, and unforgettable. Episode 4 was where the writing and execution really became next level, taking a concept that could have felt overly theatrical and turning it into one of the most jaw-dropping hours of television I've seen all year. The Penguin on HBO is of the category of show I would refer to as better than it has any right to be. I loved the concept for Gotham when it was on the WB not too many years ago, but it fell short in execution for me. But here, this show does everything right. Colin Farrell reprises his role as Oz from the Batman movie from a couple of years ago, and in this spinoff, he's even better than he was in the movie. This show dives into the seedy underworld of Gotham, just like that other show tried to do, but this one plays it for realsies, exploring power struggles, betrayal, and what it takes to climb to the top when you're at the bottom. The show is dark, gritty, and surprisingly emotional. The best gangster show I've seen maybe since The Sopranos, certainly on HBO. And again, I can say that because we watched all 6 seasons of The Sopranos earlier this year. Last up on this list is another Apple TV Plus show, Disclaimer. This came in right at the end of the year, and I actually had to remove something from the list to make room for this one. Disclaimer is a tense psychological thriller from Alfonso Cuarón, his second TV show, but his second streaming thing after Roma a few years ago on Netflix. The show is anchored by a mesmerizing performance by Cate Blanchett, who, by the way, my mother does not like. She just doesn't trust her. Cate Blanchett's playing a renowned journalist whose professional detachment is upended by a mysterious manuscript that appears out of nowhere and dredges up secrets from her past. The show also has Barat, not playing Barat, Sacha Baron Cohen playing the husband that Cate Blanchett's character deceived. I can't tell you what I loved so much about this show without blowing a massive spoiler, but I really did enjoy how masterfully it blurred the lines between memory and reality, unspooling revelations in this slow burning way that had me questioning my assumptions throughout the series. There were a few times, especially early on, where I turned to Cindy and I had one grievance. I said, they really need to explain this thing to me. And then the last episode came and it explained it to me in such a thorough way that it elevated all of the episodes that came before. And I really loved how they put all of that together. Disclaimer does have a lot of Sean tropes in that it's kind of an unsettling look at the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we've done and how something can suddenly unravel at the turn of a page. If you love a drama that dangles uneasy questions before peeling them back layer by layer, Disclaimer is a must-see. A couple of quick honorable mentions before we go. Shrinking, also on Apple TV+. Now, one of the biggest critiques of my story ideas in their rawest form is that my characters really like to talk things out in the end. Another critique is that I love writing damaged characters. So of course I would be drawn to a show where emotional conflict and resolution are the primary drivers. Bill Lawrence also created both Scrubs and Ted Lasso, the first of which I loved, and the latter of which I liked the first season a lot. But Shrinking is my favorite Bill Lawrence show so far, by far. It's heartwarming. It's hilariously dysfunctional. Essentially, it's about a grieving therapist played by Jason Segel who decides to start breaking the rules with all of his patients. Everyone in the show is great, including a golden era Harrison Ford. The show had me hooked in season 1. I really loved it. I was really looking forward to it. And the second season did a lot of things right. I feel like if they had kept it to 10 episodes, like the first season, instead of expanding it to 12, it would have made the list. And I would have had to take something else off to make room for Disclaimer. The second honorable mention goes to Arcane Season 2. Season 1 of this show was gorgeous. It artfully blended this bleeding edge animation and a compelling storyline and deeply human themes. The show introduced viewers to this vivid world where technology and magic coexist in a very tense and class-divided society. So we can insert the magic in there, but we already have a frame of reference for the tense and class-divided society. Every scene in the show was just visually breathtaking, and that artistry was matched by meticulous character development. The bond between sisters was beautifully explored, and it really worked as an emotional core for the series. So that's all to say that I was really, really looking forward to seeing season 2, and I'm not through it by the time I'm making this list, and it's the new year, and so it doesn't quite make it onto the list, but man, I have to talk about it because it's really, really great. And if you haven't seen the first season of Arcane, you absolutely should. And midway through the second season, I'm enjoying it very, very much. And I will close with one cautionary tale. I have to say, Bad Sisters on Apple TV, really, I expected it to be on this list before I saw it. The first season of Bad Sisters was one of my favorite things that I saw. It had this character that I really loved to hate, an interesting use of timeline, great characters with a lot of empathy, and you understood what everyone was going through. But season 2 should never have existed. It kind of had the Big Little Lies problem, where this beautiful limited series that should have just stayed as is was wildly successful for the streamer, and so they decided to expand it into a second season. I'm disappointed. Just like the last episodes of Disclaimer justify all the episodes that come before, I feel like this second season of Bad Sisters slightly dilutes the first one. But that's okay. I'll watch the first one again and it will still be just as good. If you enjoyed this list, hit the subscribe button for more storytelling deep dives, and don't forget to share your favorites of the year in the comments. I want to know what you were binging, debating, or obsessing over this year, because great TV deserves great conversations. Grab your free copy of Americana while you're here. The link's in the description. Remember how HBO canceled Westworld? You don't have to be sad anymore. Americana is like Westworld, but with a lot of Marilyn Monroes instead of robots. See you tomorrow.